Alright guys, I got booted from the room. So here I'm out on the deck, and actually I do want to be a little more in the sun because this is nice. So you guys are joining me on my lovely deck here. And because of COVID, I don't have nearly as many planes going over top, so once in a while there's a good thing that comes out of this shit. So we were talking about glycemic index, I believe, and so what I kind of want to cover with that is that when we talk about the glycemic index of foods, we're talking about having the food by itself, right? We're not taking that food and we are, mixing it with other foods. So take the glycemic index with a grain of salt, because it is important to know which foods that, if you were to snack on them, might cause problems. But if you have, say, a steak and you have potatoes with it, the glycemic spike of those potatoes is going to be brought down because the steak is actually going to help your body to slow down the digestion of that food. And I think that's something I alluded to, but I didn't quite get to. The reason why we want to do complex carbohydrates is because it takes more for the body to break that down and more time for it to become and be used as energy. So one thing that I do tell people that, if you guys have guilty pleasures such as chocolate or gummy bears or soda or something like that, the time to have that is going to be either in the middle of a workout or immediately post-workout, because what's going to happen there is that your blood sugar is actually going to be pretty low because your muscles have been using all that glycogen that you have within your system, and so you're going to end up into that state where you actually are going to be utilizing it right away, and you're not going to be storing those simple sugars as fat. And even so, that's the reason why sports drinks have a lot of sugar in them. It's so that you can, that when your glycogen stores are getting depleted, you're starting to get fatigued because you don't have enough sugars available to your muscles. Those sports drinks are going to spike your blood sugar back up to where it needs to be in order to continue with that movement, that activity. And this is one of the things that's become more controversial in recent years is going to be the idea of carb loading before an activity. One of the things that has happened fairly recently is that people who do endurance athletes, like people who do marathons or something like that, sometimes actually do develop type 2 diabetes, and it could be theorized that the reason why they're developing it is potentially carb loading. Maybe they're doing a lot of marathons, and so they're carb loading all the time, and they're using simple sugars to bring up that stored glycogen so you can do the more endurance type stuff. So I would say that if you feel the need to carb load, be conservative about it, and then have easy to digest carbs for when you're doing that endurance activity. And there's a good cookbook out there called The Feed Zone, FEED zone, and I think there's actually a couple of them. That I have, like the book that I have is the Feed Zone Portables, and it has all the nutritional information at the bottom. It's got foods that are for people who are doing marathons or stuff like that, so doing a tournament or whatever. So yeah, your body likes consistent blood sugar. We kind of covered that, and what happens. And another thing that people think is healthy is like fruit juice. So generally speaking, carbs have about 4 grams of calories or 4 calories per gram of carbs, and they make up should make up about 50 to 70% of your daily intake. And you want to be focusing on, especially if you're eating it by itself, lower glycemic, more complex carbs with complex sugars within them. And one of the things, actually, I made this as a note in here, that low carb and protein or fat diets that are really popular, a lot of people that are doing those diets are in their 20s and 30s, right? And so I would like to point out that, when we are talking about something like heart disease, how long does it take you to develop heart disease? Most people don't really start to see it a whole lot until they're probably in their late 40s to early 50s. So if you've got this 20 to 30 year old standing there going, oh yeah, I don't have heart disease and I'm on this high fat diet, they aren't old enough to start seeing the consequences of that diet. So take that with a grain of salt as well. Now, well, we have the the causation versus correlation on the spiking in obesity within the U.S. And one of the things that they've kind of don't really talk about much is that we've become more sedentary. We're not doing as much manual labor as we used to. When we get home, what do we immediately do? We crash on the couch, we eat junk food, whatever. So we have a lot more factors that are playing in to the obesity epidemic than just carbohydrates alone. But they don't like to talk about that. So the other thing, so we're going into fiber, which is generally insoluble, and at the age of 30, like 5 years ago, that's when I started noticing problems with my fiber intake, and I started having GI issues. And those GI issues were resolved by using psyllium husk. So fiber is one of those things, it's really great for preventing colon cancer. It keeps your digestive tract healthy, it keeps your butt healthy. It's really, really good stuff. So I would definitely recommend that you do check your fiber intake. Now, this kind of goes into what I kind of wanted to get into, which is going to be this, how many calories that you need to have in a day. And so one thing that we have this misconception about, which is the 2,000 calorie example that you see on all food, based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And why does it say based on a 2,000 calorie diet? Because unless you're like a 5'5" moderately active woman, you probably don't need a 2,000 calorie diet. Okay? So, depending on your gender, your age, your activity level, your body composition, the amount of calories that you need is going to be different, right? And so, and this is one of the things that irritates me about the calculations that I'm about to give you here, right? And that is that it's not taking into account any of those things. Right? It's just using your weight. So take it with a grain of salt. And the reason why I'm going to give you these calories is not necessarily to tell you that you need to start calorie counting. In fact, I don't recommend calorie counting. But the formula for just kind of figuring out what your resting metabolic rate is, which is the one that's going to be the most variable, this is how many calories it takes you to get through a day and survive. If you don't have enough calories to meet that, you will lose weight and eventually die. And so the resting metabolic rate that is generally is the easy formula. There is a harder formula for this, but I stopped recommending it because I just want this to be a quick and dirty thing here, which is take your weight and multiply it by 10. So, I'm 170 pounds, so 1,700 calories is what it's going to take that I need to just basically function and not get out of bed. Right? So what you do at that point is you're going to multiply it by your activity factor. So if you're sedentary, you're going to be multiplying it by 1.2 to 1.3. Moderate active is 1.4 to 1.6. So that's 1.5 times that. So if I am moderately active, which I am, and I am 1,700 calories, I'm going to say that 800 is going to be half of that. So we're going to be looking at 2,500 calories. When I did the more accurate formula, I was closer to 2,700 calories. But it's close enough because, again, this is not taking into account all the factors that are required here. Okay, so for your most active, you're going to be multiplying by 1.7 to 2.0, and that's going to be people who are endurance athletes, bodybuilders, wrestlers. If you're actively training multiple times a week, you may need more calories. Now, the things that are going to affect that, like I said, muscles burns calories. Fat does not. So if you are overweight and what you have is 40%, 40% body fat, you probably don't need that many calories to maintain your own body weight. Versus somebody who is a bodybuilder and they've got all this muscle mass, they might have to keep eating 3,500 calories just to maintain that, right? So, if I were a really active bodybuilder and I multiplied by 2, I'd be at 340 calories. I think that my math is right there. So, the deal is that when you find out what your resting metabolic rate and the amount of calories that you should be taking in are, take that with a grain of salt because that is not actually the number. It's close. So what you need to do is then, at that point, go through a day and track your calories for one day, and then like 2 or 3 days later, track it again. These are like your work days, and then do one day that's like your weekend day when you're off. Okay? And find out how many calories you're already taking in. Now, if you are significantly under the number that you have come up with here, sometimes I've had people say, well, I only eat 600 calories from one bowl of pho a day. I actually had a client like that. He would always get sick in his workouts, but he was overweight. Why? He's not eating nearly enough calories to maintain his body weight. Why is he not losing weight? Because his metabolism has slowed down. He didn't have any muscle mass to burn those calories, and his body's trying to protect itself by metabolizing things slower. So, you might, when you start eating at the level that you should be eating at, you might find that you gain weight. And the way that you counteract that is you be more active than you were. You use those calories so your body gets used to that higher caloric expenditure. So, whatever you have determined for this, and again, this is just trying to find a ballpark, and if you are eating in that ballpark and you cut 300 to 500 calories out of your diet and you start losing weight, then you know that is your maintenance level, right? But if you're eating the amount of calories that I've recommended here and you're staying at a body weight, that's probably right. If you're going above that and you're gaining weight, there you go. One thing on gaining weight, and we don't talk about this well enough, I think, amongst lay people, and that is that we think that we can eat all these excessive calories and put on 3 to 5 pounds a week, and then cut a couple months later. And when we go through these building and cuts, what we're doing is we're putting on fat. It's not muscle. We can only put on 1 to 2% of our body weight, or 1% of our body weight per month, which is usually between most people 1 to 2 pounds, right, of muscle per month, regardless of how many calories we're eating, right? So if we're eating enough calories to support that muscle growth, which is usually within this range, you are going to put on 1 to 2 pounds of muscle. Eating an absurd, excessive amount is not going to expedite that process. In fact, it's going to hurt you. And so one of the things is that you have 3 different types of muscle within your body. You have smooth muscle, skeletal muscle, the ones that you move. So your smooth muscle is going to be your intestines and whatnot. Your skeletal muscles do this. And then you have cardiac muscle. And when you lose weight and you lose fat, you are taking, when you're losing weight, you're actually losing muscle in that process, and it's from all 3 types of muscle. So you're going to lose digestive muscle, you're going to lose cardiac muscle, you're going to lose skeletal muscle. So why would you keep going up and down, up and down, up and down through these growing and cutting phases if every time you're doing that you're hurting your heart? And that's one of the reasons why you do see heart disease being relatively prevalent within bodybuilders, besides the fact that they're carrying all that weight and that is putting more strain onto their circulatory system. So, like I said, whatever number that we came up to here, to figure out our carbs, if you're sitting at a desk job, you might want to only multiply your carbs by 45, right? So multiply it by 0.45, and that's going to give you your carbohydrate amount for the day, where you probably should sit. Or if you're really, really active, you're doing a lot of endurance-y things like wrestling, 65% might be a better range for you because you're using those carbohydrates. But again, use the energy source that your body needs. So if you have too much carbohydrate in a moment, and I guess I didn't quite touch on that, if you spike your blood sugar or you have too much carbohydrate and you're not going to use it, eventually it's going to be stored as fat. Protein that you do not use either goes to your kidneys, becomes carbohydrate, or is stored as fat. Fats that you don't use, stored as fat. Fats are really hard to go through the Krebs cycle, so when your body needs fats, they're not the best fuel source, even in the ketone form, because the ketones are the part of the fat that goes through the Krebs cycle. But if you're in ketosis and your ketones are already developed just to keep you alive, they are more readily usable by your body, but you're still not going to have the same performance. The people that I've talked to that were doctors that have done keto and tried to exercise and just see what happened, they didn't necessarily see a huge drop in their performance, but they did find themselves a hell of a lot more fatigued after the workout. So they were completely depleted because they didn't have an adequate fuel source to get them through that. So for protein, again, we talked about that. It's 10 to 35% of your diet should be protein, depending on your goals, right? If you're just maintaining, I'd probably say have 20% of your calories from protein. If you are trying to build, you might want to go up to that 35 range, right? And fats, you should not be eating 10% of your calories from fat. So get off that low-fat bullshit. And you should be between 20 and 35% fat, but you will find that actually for all of these, protein, fat, everything, you're probably getting enough in your diet already, especially protein, right? You do not need to supplement for protein, and a lot of times protein supplements will have things like heavy metals in them, which can lead to cancer. So, if you are going to supplement, you might want to go with a whey protein. You want to have one that's been around for a long time because it's been reviewed by the FDA. And we'll get into supplementation here in a second, which, well, I guess we're already there. So before I get into supplementation though, we calculate basically where we should kind of be with our calories, which is going to give us kind of where we should be with our fats, carbohydrates, and protein. We know that we want to have those complex carbohydrates. We know that we want to have good, healthy fats. We want to have an even distribution of protein throughout our day. And so your protein is probably the most overconsumed macronutrient of any macronutrient out there, other than carbohydrate, if you were trying to stay low fat. So, generally speaking, if you're trying to stick to like whole foods, so you're eating apples, you're eating bananas, you're eating vegetables, not using a lot of salad dressing, you're not having crackers or other processed foods. When you buy a bread, the bread has, like 6 ingredients and you recognize all of them. They can have 50 ingredients if like the ingredients are like different nuts or whatever. That's fine, but if you're seeing things that are like screaming, this is processed as fuck, then you probably don't necessarily want to be putting that bread into your body. I personally like Dave's Killer Bread, but you eat what you want. And before I go into supplementation, I did want to kind of go through a little bit, because I've touched on it a little bit. This is from the American Dietetics Association's page. This is the article that they have on keto, and I know that this is controversial. You're not going to want to hear it if you're pro keto or pro low carb, but I think it's very important for me to actually say this, and this is coming from the largest governing body regarding nutrition that has thousands, not the 15 studies that have studied low carb and keto, and not even, it's usually one or the other, and most of them have not been double checked. They have not been reproduced. A lot of them usually have very, very small, and they even say that on here, that the studies that that are available to give us some insight to how the body's going to respond to a ketogenic diet usually don't have a lot of participants in them, usually under 20. There's no study that exists today that assesses the long-term effects of a ketogenic diet, even if you use it in the short term. Now, I did read a study a little while back, which was published after this article was written, and they haven't put up an article after this, that has said that people who go onto a ketogenic diet for, say, a week and then get off of it, will see some health benefits, and it might be healthy to do that. But the people that try to go for a month, 2 months, 3 months, they potentially are doing more harm than good to their bodies. So, so when they're talking about the is the keto pattern diet safe, it's not recommended with people with pancreatic disease, liver conditions, thyroid problems, eating disorders, or a history of eating disorders, or gallbladder disease. And again, we talked about this a little bit. If you're doing high protein with a ketogenic diet, you're not in ketosis, because that protein is going to go through glucogenesis and it's going to keep you out of ketosis. Alcohol will also keep you out of ketosis. But if you you're probably not getting enough fiber, so you probably want to use an insoluble fiber supplement like Metamucil to keep your bowels regular. That's going to be a very big thing. Constipation is a common issue with keto. You probably already aware about the keto flu. So those are one of those things that becomes an issue. One issue that's common is that since you shouldn't be on a ketogenic diet for a long period of time, when people get off of it, they tend to put their weight back on relatively quickly when they go back to their natural eating patterns. And also, most of the weight that you're losing in the first 2 weeks to a month is going to be water weight, because you're not putting water into your body, so you're losing that water weight, and that's going to cause some initial weight loss. But weight loss is not the same thing as fat loss. So you can that's kind of interesting, is that the intakes of vitamins A, C, K are usually low. 2 of those are fat soluble, so that's interesting. But we also did talk about, if you are taking in too much fat and you're taking fat soluble vitamins on that, you can reach that toxicity level, like we said in the very beginning. So there's a considerable body of research that has shown that diets high in saturated fats may increase the risk of heart disease or other chronic health problems. The risk of keto dieters might be taking with regards to the long-term cardiovascular health has not been fully studied. Anywhere in the world, it has not been fully studied. There are no peer-reviewed studies that have actually confirmed that keto is healthy and effective. One of the things that I'm going to leave this here for a second that is also true is that there was a study that was looking at the efficacy of a 6 month to a year on a ketogenic diet compared to a regular balanced diet, and what they found was that at 6 months both diets had the same results, and after 6 months the regular healthy diet actually produced better weight loss than the ketogenic diet. So it might have some really fast initial response within your body, because you are making a drastic change, as most diets are effective in the beginning, because you're making a dramatic change to the way that you're eating. You're cutting out all that processed food, you're cutting out all the junk that you've been eating, and you're actually paying attention to what you're eating. You're going to see that that initial weight loss, but over time, no diet that exists outside of a healthy, well-balanced diet actually maintains body weight well. So their bottom line here says the ketogenic diet is quite restrictive. Research supporting this eating pattern for epilepsy, when managed along with a healthcare system, since its treatment can be very complex. However, with regards to keto as a tool for weight loss and other health benefits, the jury is still out. And I think that is a really meaningful thing for me, that there is not a consensus on that. I had thought about something else I was going to point out there, but maybe I'll remember it in a little bit. So, with regards to supplementation, because I kind of digressed away from that. Generally speaking, you should be able to get all your nutrients from food. Eating meats is going to give you your creatine. There probably are creatine sources for vegans that I'm not familiar with. Look it up. Right, there are plenty of healthy vegans out there. Creatine is one of the first things that helps you actually metabolize energy when you first start working out. So basically, creatine bonds to phosphorus and floats through your bloodstream. When your muscles start activating, they're going to use the phosphocreatine to replace the phosphorus in ATP when it becomes ADP. So adenosine triphosphate 3-phosphates is your unit of energy. It burns one of those phosphates, it'll reach to the phosphocreatine, borrow that phosphorus, and be able to go. This usually lasts for about 10 seconds when you're not supplementing with creatine. If you are supplementing, it might go up to 15 seconds. It might give you one more rep for whatever you're doing, and it's going to make you retain more water, so you're going to look like you actually have put on more muscle. You haven't actually put on more muscle. Your muscle's just retaining more water. With protein, we kind of already covered that there are health consequences with taking protein. So if you're going to use a protein, try to use one that's been around for a while. When we talk about supplement research done by the FDA, they really only research supplements when something goes wrong. And I think that's a very important thing to know, because one of the strategies that a lot of the major supplement companies do, and especially when it comes to pre-workouts, is that they only stay in operation. You'll see pre-workouts come and go every 5 years. They'll disappear, and then there will be a new one that just shows up, and they keep on going. And the reason why that is that people start dying from these. Right, it triggers cardiovascular events. Other health issues start coming up. The FDA gets flagged and like, well, what do all these spikes of health problems have in common? Oh, everybody was taking this pre-workout. Let's do a chemical analysis of this. And there are sometimes chemical compounds that have a very similar effect to methamphetamine that can be in a pre-workout. Old workouts back in the 40s were actually advertised as, yay, they have methamphetamine in them. There are also ones that have what's called DMAA, which is very similar to that. So there are issues that come along with that. So generally speaking, like, the FDA doesn't get involved with supplements until there's a problem, and so a supplement oftentimes can remain on the market for over 5 years before anybody has a clue that it's causing health problems, right? And so what do these companies do? Well, they rebrand every 5 years. They become a new company, so they sell all the rest of the old one, and they keep producing, but they do it under a different label so nobody can follow them. Right? And so pre-workouts, especially, like, if you're going to do a pre-workout, I might recommend going with Optimum Nutrition. I don't owe them anything, but their protein supplement or their energy supplements have been on the market for decades. And so when we are looking at what pre-workout I want to be using, are you going to be using one of these ones that come and go and are just hyped, or are you going to go with something that's not going to kill you? In regards to other types of supplementation, we talked about vitamins at the very beginning of this. A lot of times can be an energy booster in a vitamin supplement that makes you perk up and feel like it's actually doing something. But generally speaking, you can use online resources. Labdoor is a little bit controversial right now, but there are sources like that that produce consumer reports for vitamins to let you know that they are actually as advertised, that they don't have potentially unhealthy ingredients within them. So do your due diligence before you supplement. Have blood work done before you take a vitamin supplement, and follow your doctor's advice, right? And they might be able to recommend whichever vitamins they want you to take. They might recommend that you do your own research on that, and they might point out that the supplement industry is not well regulated, and it's not an honest industry. So I think that's about it for tonight, guys. I know that this was really long-winded, a lot longer than I intended it to be, but at the same time, I really want to make sure that I've done a good job with this and that I've given you high-quality information. Like I said, do not take my word for it, okay? I am a personal trainer. I've been licensed as a personal trainer or certified for over 6 years, and I do have experience. I've worked with a lot of people. I've helped them lose weight. I've helped them gain muscle. I've helped them do a lot of things, and I've done it this way. This is the way I've done it. And I actually have screwed up. I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because I was talking about the amount of calories that you eat and using a calorie tracker and all that. Use it for 3 days. You find out what a baseline is, and then you basically go with the flow, but having an understanding of what's going to be a healthier diet for you. So a lot of times I recommend that people will plan their food based on the food that they already eat. Like, if you have a habit for eating a bad food, I wouldn't even actually necessarily recommend stop eating that food. I would say start cutting down the amount that you eat, maybe reducing the portions, reducing the times that you actually eat it. So if you're like me, I'm addicted to chocolate. I have my chocolate usually immediately after workout. Okay, there's a strategic reason for that. That strategic reason is the fact that my glycogen levels are low, and so I'm not going to get that high blood spike. I also prefer dark chocolate, so I'm done with chocolate really, really fast when I do eat it. But really, you should just get a feel for what a healthy, balanced diet looks like, and then reassess every couple of months. But you should not be tracking every single day. That's tedious. That's you're going to lose focus usually after a couple of days. You're not going to usually do it for more than a couple of days. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about water too. So yeah, and also like when we're trying to get the feel for food, the New York Times has done articles, and then Board Panda, and I know that's a not reliable resource, but a lot of these like little sites and even reputable sites have done projects where they have just shown what it takes to have certain caloric levels, right? So what is 2,000 calories versus fast food look like compared to home-cooked meals that are very, very simple foods that have all whole ingredients? You're going to have a lot more food that you have to eat on here to get the calories over here, right? And so it's a lot easier to overeat when you're eating junk versus when you're eating whole foods. So you're going to find like there's one out there that, and it's actually, you can just get it in a single picture now, image, for 200 calories. What does 200 calories or 300 calories look like? You can have that many jelly beans, like really, it's like the size of an empty toilet paper roll, right? How many of you can fit into that, just at the base to make one level, compared to broccoli, which fills up the entire plate, and it's actually kind of ridiculous and silly. So really, when you're looking at calories, start actually looking at what do calories look like, because it's easy to say, you need, for me, about 2,700 calories a day to maintain my current body weight. Calories are not a measure of anything to you. You have no connection to what that is. So get that connection. Look at resources that helps you understand what does that look like. It's one of the things Penn Jillette says is that we can conceptualize 5 or 10, but when we start talking about the national debt and it's over $15 trillion, we have no concept of what that is. It's a shit fuck ton, right? It's a very, very big number, and we don't have a way of doing that. 2,000 calories, that's a big number, and we don't even know what a calorie is, right? What does 1 calorie look like? I don't know. But I know what 200 calories look like. I know what 300 calories look like. And so if I'm eating 6 meals a day, there's probably going to be around that 300 calorie range, sometimes 400, if I'm eating 5-6 meals a day. So I need to know what those meals or snacks or whatever look like. So I don't know why I keep looking at this, because what I'm talking about is not on it. So try to find a perspective on that. Try to have fruits and vegetables in every single meal. Salad is great. But when I make a salad, I'm using something like kale. I'm using spinach. I'm using collard greens. I'm looking for the highest nutrient density vegetables that I can find, and then I'm making the salad interesting. So if you're eating iceberg or romaine lettuce, which are both very, very low in actual nutritional benefits, and that's all you're eating, and you're just pouring a bunch of ranch dressing on that, your calories are coming from the ranch dressing, not the salad, and you're not actually eating healthy there. You're probably putting yourself into some nutrient deficits. So what does a salad look like for me? Well, it's going to be those varieties of leafy greens. I may add some arugula in there for some nuttiness, some radicchio, whatever. But I'm going to add bell peppers in there. So bell peppers and kiwis have 2 to 4 times more vitamin C in them than an orange does. Fun fact. I'll throw carrots in there, right? I will, like I said, bell peppers. I'll do radishes. I'll do tomatoes. My salads are going to be freaking interesting as fuck. And why? Well, because I want to be healthy and I want that to look like that. Outside of that, I focus on cruciferous vegetables. So I have, asparagus, I have Brussels sprouts, I have broccolis, I have cauliflowers, all that kind of thing, because those are going to be some of the most nutrient-dense vegetables. nuts are going to be healthy. Legumes are going to be healthy. Even canned beans. I know in these times we might have a shortage of food. It's okay to eat canned food. All the nutritionists that I've talked to have all said that that canned foods have come a long way and they're not nearly as unhealthy as they used to be. And when you are short on other options, they are a good option now. So don't rule them out. Beets are delicious, by the way. Fun fact: there is rums are sometimes made out of beets sugars instead of molasses. I'm a rum fanatic, so whatever. Anyways, so the last thing I'm going to leave you with is going to be water. Right? How much water do you drink? And I was really kind of disturbed a while back by a little online show called Adam Ruins Everything, where he talks about water recommendations. And they had this condescending woman on there that said, you know, the indicator for how much water you should drink is thirst. No. People get dehydrated all the time when you're doing sports. So if you think about it, if you're doing a sport, if you're wrestling all the time, or you're playing football or something, you're running several miles, you know, you might feel thirsty. You might. But it's the same thing as if I were to, you know, hit your toe with a hammer, just enough to make it hurt a little bit, and then I broke your arm. Which one are you going to be thinking about? It's not going to be your toe. It's going to be your arm is broken. Right? You got a little stub toe, you got a broken arm. This is where my focus is. When you are exercising, when you're doing things, when you're working at your computer at work or whatever you're doing, your focus is not on what you're drinking. You may not even have water there. You might not be getting enough water in per day. So, you know, there is no scientific evidence that says you should drink a gallon of water a day, and I've talked about that before, is, you know, 2,000 calories is not the caloric intake that you need. 20 to 25 grams of protein is not what your body can metabolize, because we are all different sizes and shapes. So your water needs are going to be for you. So you can use your urine as a measure. You can use your performance. So if you're feeling like you're doing exercise and you're always winded really early, but you know you've got generally fine endurance because you've been doing cardio on a treadmill forever. Don't use a treadmill for cardio, but you've been active, and so your endurance should be better, but you're feeling like you just don't have it today. It's probably because you're dehydrated, right? And you know, Gatorade is not necessarily your best choice of, you know, when it comes to electrolytes. You know, you might Emergency actually came out with one that has a better mixture, but actually, you know, one of the electrolytes that you actually need more is going to be potassium, and a good source for that would be like coconut water. The brand that I recommend is Harmless Harvest, not only because it's generally less processed than the other ones, but it also tastes good. So much coconut water tastes like sour milk. So that would be the brand that I would necessarily recommend. It is a little bit higher on sugar, but again, if you're having it post-workout, it's not nearly the same issue because our glycogen levels are depleted. So guys, I've covered a lot here. So instead of you know, coming down on me and harassing me about, you know, bashing low carb and ketogenic diets on this video, go to reputable sources. Like, you're not going to go to Mama Kim's blog to learn about the best way to protect yourself against coronavirus, right? You're going to go to the CDC, you're going to go to the World Health Organization. You go to these big bodies that have conducted the research, have compiled the research, looked at the pros and cons, and made well-educated decisions, right? You're not going to go to a Gary Taubes book. That's the guy I was talked about earlier. He's not a nutritionist. He's a journalist who started his own company to do research, to sell his own books. And that's it. His entire objective is to sell books, to sell his diet. It's not, no, I'm sorry. When I look at all the major worldly nutritional sites and organizations, they don't recommend going onto that type of diet. So listen to the consensus. Consensus matters. So I think that's about it for right now. if you guys have questions, if I didn't cover something, or if I said something that I was planning on covering and I didn't cover it, say so down below, and I will see if I can either make a new video of it or comment down below and let you know about that. But again, I'm not getting you the numbers and the equations that I mentioned in here, really. I did mention them, but I'm not going to give you the handouts for you to figure it out for yourself, because I want you to go and I want you to look at the FDA. I want you to look at the American Dietetics Association. I want you to go look for quality information and find out for yourself. Because I'm a personal trainer and I'm not allowed to give you in-depth nutritional advice like I just gave you. But I want you to know that this is the what I've been taught. This is the research that I've done. I've told you how I've done my research. I've always looked towards nutritionists. I've always looked towards large bodies. So hopefully this is as sound as it possibly can be, right? So take it seriously, look into it, find your own research, and don't come down on me for the shit I've said here, because again, the whole point is to educate and give you some perspective on that. And there's a lot more details that I can go into it as far as how your body energy systems work, and I might do that on another video. I probably will, but it's going to be sciencey. It's going to be mind-numbing, more so than this was, and I don't know that it's necessarily productive. But once you actually understand how your body metabolizes energy and how it functions, you'll understand why people are making these recommendations, not the keto / low carb recommendations. And there is a diet out there called the cotton ball diet, right, where you swallow cotton balls instead of food, and it curbs your appetite, right? Fucking stupid. Don't do that shit, right? Most diets that are out there, South Beach diet, are generally pretty crazy. The best diet for you, and this is the best advice I'll ever give you on nutrition, is stay on the diet that you can live on for the rest of your life, that you can follow through the rest of your life, and that also means that you have to enjoy it. So learn how to enjoy healthy foods. Take little steps towards having the cleanest diet possible by making little changes instead of one big change. Right? Because that's how we're going to actually develop good habits. And if we're always thinking about making a little better choice every single time, eventually that's going to be the habit, is making the better choice. And we're going to get there easier, and we're going to get there quicker. So eat your vegetables, eat your fiber, eat your carbs, eat fat, have a reasonable amount of protein, and you'll find when you look up how much 20 to 25 grams of protein is, it's actually about half a steak, half a chicken breast. The quantities that we're eating are way generally high up there, and I think a Ruth's Chris big cut of steak, like a Texas size cut of steak, is actually 1,500 to 2,000 calories by itself. So it adds up fast. So thank you guys very much for watching, if you have, and comment below, ask your questions. I'm here for you. Alright guys, I'm signing out. Knees!